They go, yeah.
They'll switch to Netflix. There's too many entertainment options. So I was sitting there like the first time it happened, what can I do? And I looked over at my backpacks of the gear that runs on Speedify. You paid for a year of it. You can use it on any computer or device. So I just pulled out my one of several hotspots I have, hooked it up, cranked up Speedify, and it has never been a problem since.
We used the Speedify software at a command line level, so it's not running a whole UI which is starting to drain resources. It's really very, very base level. And the really clever people at the BBC got it all working, and we're now presenting whole programs every single day of the year have been presented using this technology. All our weather reports from our weather presenter are done on them.
If I look back at my original lives, they are awful. They're terrible. But we all start somewhere and we all get better. And every time you go live and every time you get on camera, you're going to get a little bit more comfortable.
You saw part
Really?
of it? Cool.
Nice. All right, we are famous. You want to say hi to everybody? Now you're on the video. So wave. That's the camera right there. Nice. All right. We are going back to look at this guy's house. It has a lot of white lights.
There he is. Hey, Christian.
Fine.
Tell you light on the back so you can see when it's how it's live.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so these lights
do have RGB mixing, so if you want to do each color, you can mix them independently. Within the app, there are a couple features, and I'll just go show you this.
See power. There we go.
Woo! Oh my God, it's beautiful.
Is just building budget aesthetic gaming PCs, and I have my studio here now, so we've graduated away from the basement of my house and whatnot.
Also, I would say streaming kept me from going completely insane when I was in that hotel room for 2 weeks when I first got to Australia.
So raising awareness is really going to help break that stigma. We definitely have a stigma in our society where it's, not okay for folks to be open about their medical conditions. It's kind of seen as shameful.
All of us have these amazing cameras, Apple, Samsung, Google.
We have customers come in all the time who say, oh, I watched this stream and I came in from out of town and I knew we had to stop here.
We build custom PCs for a lot of content creators, gamers, you name it, businesses, colleges, esports.
And then I do a lot of thought leadership talking and trying to educate the industry on the value of techifying, as I call it, their events, and been doing that for a long time.
The first 2 years of live streaming was actually just myself. I was kind of acting as a community manager.
You know what? I never used to think that people wanted to cared about what I wanted to say, but now I'm like, you know what?
I care. I care, Gina.
You've got to put it out there. You've just got to put it out there, and someone will listen.
I used to actually be solely mobile, so I used to teach people how to edit using KineMaster, which is just a mobile app. Really, really cool app.
I love the process of both. I love the editing process, the scripting process, and things like that of recorded videos. But nothing for me also beats the buzz that you get from pressing the go live button.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's Speedify Live, and I'm your host, Alex Gieses, on a very special National Beer Day Eve celebration. So said the Speedify Live, the live stream about live streaming. This is where we learn more about how to live stream, both by talking to the software and technology companies that make it possible, as well as great live streamers we all like to watch, which is what we're doing today. Got a repeat guest, a crowd favorite here. But before I get into that, give us a follow. So, click subscribe, follow, whatever it is underneath. If you're watching on YouTube, you got to hit that little bell so you actually get the notification when we go live. And tell us what you're watching. Who'd you like to see as a guest? Because people like being on the show. So our special National Beer Day Eve guest today is Doug Piper Sr. This is Doug's third time on the show. Doug is a food and beverage consultant for Gourmet Brewing. He's a certified beer and mead judge in Cicerone. He's done all sorts of things. I think at one point he was an aerospace engineer, but now he is fully into food and wine and mead and cider. And rumor has it he is coming up to speed on coffee, which will be very exciting for me. So let's bring Doug on. Hey, Doug, welcome back.
Great. Well, it's Alex. It's good to see you again. We always have so much fun when we talk. I appreciate all the help you've been getting me to as far as I've gotten so far.
Actually, I kind of forgot this. During the COVID lockdowns, for like company parties, we would do big Zoom calls where we would ship the employees beer and have a Zoom call with Doug. So Doug could explain what we were all like tasting and looking for in the history of the beer. And then we would have a beer together. And I think those are some of the best COVID remote events we had. So thank you for those, Doug.
They were a lot of fun for me too. The beers are different in every region. So unless you're getting a well-distributed beer, I think I got some pretty unusual ones that I can't necessarily get in the Carolinas that you guys had up there. But so we could all drink together and have the same beer. That's what really makes it fun, because somebody might say, ooh, this has an interesting flavor, but I can't quite name it. Somebody else will go, ooh, it tastes kind of like black pepper. And you go, yeah, that's it. So when you're sharing the same beer, then you have that kind of dialogue together, and it's fun.
Yeah, especially we have people in Serbia and Romania, and there's some logistical challenges getting them the same beers, but we pulled it off, right? Almost.
Yeah, I think they had one broken beer.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
Like that.
That's better than how it usually goes with my luggage.
Yeah. So actually, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? I tried to give a summary, but you're always the best.
Well, I'm primarily, I went through school, Clemson University, for those of us that know the football program. Finished in electrical engineering. Went to a company, did aerospace and electrical engineering for almost 40 years. Really decided I didn't want to die paying bills and wanted to do some things that were more of a passion project. Not that I didn't enjoy aerospace, loved it, wouldn't change a thing, but I was ready to do something different. Really did not have a plan, and started home brewing. And I realized very quickly that there's some real science in understanding what good beer tastes like. And I did not know what it was. And being an engineer, that really got me curious. And so I kind of immediately went down the route of beer judging, because I figured the only way you're going to know what a proper style and flavor is to learn to judge the best. And once you do, it's kind of life-changing, Alex. You all of a sudden, when you taste things, you go, wow, that is a unique flavor. I'm going to remember that. and it helps you live in the moment, is what I say. When I taste things that are interesting, I go, wow, how did they get that flavor? I've made a strawberry sourdough bread last night, and
Nice.
it was fantastic. I made another version with chocolate, so it was chocolate, strawberry, in sourdough bread. And so to create those kind of things, you have to understand you've got to balance them, and that's how you learn. Yeah, Tomboy says, "Stop and smell the roses" is very much like that. I drank a lot of beer before I started judging, but
You
I was
stop noticing,
drinking.
right?
I was
Yeah.
drinking and not just enjoying it.
All right. So how was the bread? Mark B asks.
The bread was great. It was my first time making it. I've had to find some kind of unique. They weren't quite dehydrated. They were more like raisin. Well, I don't know what you call that process, but they were strawberries that were dried out to a raisin consistency, and you roll them up in the sourdough, and it pretty well distributes them. Put a little powdered sugar in it, and I was excited. It really turned out nice. And that's
nice.
only about 50% of them turn out. So I'm due for a bad one now.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Yeah. I remember in college, I first tried brewing beer, and I got this kit, and I started brewing it. And my mother came over, saw it, got the exact same kit from my father, the biochemist. And so I made the beer, and it was disgusting. And I was like, well, I guess you can't really brew from a kit. Threw it away. Go home. My dad has the beer from the exact same kit, and it's fantastic because he's a biochemist. And yeah, I mean, basically when I asked him the secret, he talked about all the things he did to absolutely make sure everything was perfectly sterilized before he started the process. I was like, oh, oops. So
it's amazing. You learn. I've learned so much that has helped me in just cooking and preserving things, and good etiquette, if that's the right word, or best practice with things you put in the refrigerator. I learned that when we would have soups or something, and we'd make a soup, and we would open a big like quart container, but only take out a cup. If you just heat the whole thing and then put it back in hot, it'll preserve it because you've sterilized it. You pasteurized it.
Right.
If you don't do that, then it will quite likely spoil much quicker. So you learn a ton of stuff. And as an engineer, that's what I love to do, is just learn things that interest me.
Nice. And then for a while, I was a huge fan of that place, America U Brew. I mean, it doesn't exist anymore. They had these beer kitchens, and you'd come in, they had all the ingredients and everything was sterilized, and you would like make your beer and they'd clean up after you. And it made it so easy that even I could do it.
But you don't have to make it that complex. I have way too much gear, but I realized very quickly you can brew a whole lot more than you can or should consume. So I learned sous vide, really as a result of home brewing, and I really enjoy sous vide. So I've learned how to adapt my sous vide equipment to brewing beer, and it's great. And I brew small batches and don't have a sterilization problem. I know what you're talking about. I've had a few of those too.
Yeah. All right. So how many beer contests have you judged?
You mean, judgings, beer judgings?
Yeah.
Okay. Beer judgings, almost 50.
Okay.
In 5 years. So I've averaged about one a month.
Nice. Okay.
Highly recommend it, Alex. If you've never judged, it's okay. Find a competition. You can look on the American Homebrewers Association website. They will tell you what competitions are coming up in your area. You can look on there, and they're always looking for judges, and it doesn't matter if you don't have experience. They'll pair you up with a judge. And it's eye-opening and a ton of fun. And it's free.
All right. Tomboy asks, what's both your favorite beer?
You want to go first?
I've become a huge fan of the German Hefeweizen.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I mean, it's a couple different, but the wheat beer from Germany, I love that stuff.
With or without a lemon?
I'm fine without it. I mean, it doesn't hurt anything, but
No, it's some people feel quite strongly about that. I think it's to each his own. But I'm like you. I don't have to have the lemon, but it does add a nice complexity,
yeah,
and
we'll
complexity is what makes beers interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it depends on how good the Heffy is.
Yeah,
Some are brewed better than others. It's a hard beer to brew.
Like
So maybe
question,
if you get a lousy
bagels
one, you
be
get the
toasted or
lemon.
not? And to me, obviously, the answer is depends how good the bagel is. The worse the bagel, the better the idea of toasting it is.
I find the circumstances in the season drives your favorite beer considerably. One of my fond memories is walking through Brasserie Bone, which is the Bone Brewery in Brussels, Belgium, or Lambic, actually, Belgium. And I was with the guy who started the brewery 50 years ago. It's actually a little older than that. And he's going through all these huge barrels that you could park a Volkswagen in. And he's pulling the nail out and pouring me some beer and talking about it. And we walked all through that. And it was just an unforgettable experience, just hearing a master of one of the most unique beers in the entire world explaining the differences between each one. So, you know, I don't know that they were the best lambics in the world. I suspect they were because of who brewed them, but we were taking them straight off the barrel, and that's it's the company, it's the venue that you're at, and seasonal. You know, I like darker beers in the winter and lighter beers in the summer. Most people are that way.
Yep. All right. Ryan says, "What are your favorite Hefeweizens?"
Oh, Weinstefaner out of Germany has an excellent one called Vitus. It's imported, obviously, and Weinstefaner is considered one of the oldest breweries in the entire world, and they have some access to some of the oldest yeasts in the world as a result. And it's a great Hefeweizen and certainly world class. Sierra Nevada, nearby to us, near Asheville, brews a nice Heffy. A Hefeweizen is best fresh. So a really fresh Hefeweizen just makes all the difference in the world.
RB says, "I'm still sad that Orchid's Thieves isn't available in the U.S. I'm not a big beer drinker, but that cider is amazing. I'm not sure that I've had it."
No, don't know that one. I've had a lot of ciders, but I just got my certifications in ciders, so you could probably stump me on that in a hurry.
Okay. All right.
Oh, the Hacker Pour. I know that. Ryan's pointed out a good one.
Yeah. There we go. I guess that's the correct spelling. Nice. So we have a couple beers here. Do we want to open a beer?
Of course we do. That's why we're here.
That's right.
It's National Beer Day Eve. Is that?
That's right.
Is that our story now?
Or so that, you know, Ryan was suggesting perhaps New Beer's Eve as a.
I like it.
I'm good with that too. Yeah, there we go. New Beer's Eve. All right.
We're going to pour these guys, or are we going to talk?
Sure, let's pour these guys. So let's try this. So there we go. Oh, no, that one. There we go. Oh, so Delirium.
And we'll see if we get a nice pour out of it. I about spilled it.
So I love your beer camera setup. In fact, I love it so much that I ripped you off.
Oh, I think that works. Works for me.
So I copied you. Look.
That's okay.
I love this. So I've just always been so impressed with your beer cam setup that I needed my own. Oh,
I
bad pour.
think you
Too
one
much
up
foam.
me.
Yeah, too much foam though, right? So go back
So
to you.
Alex, what I'm zooming in on.
Yeah.
All right. Do you see kind of in the center, there's a column of bubbles coming up? Real faint, kind of in the center, but they're all going up vertical. I don't know
Yeah.
if I can wipe the glass a little bit, help see it. So those bubbles are, that's a nucleation point in the bottom of the glass. And I don't know if I can, if it's a little better zoom. Yeah, there we go. Maybe that's a little better.
Yeah, that is better actually.
All right, I'm trying to wipe it off from the condensation. So that's called a nucleation point, that little white thing at the center. And that nucleation point is what continues to give this a nice head. And if you'll notice, we've still got a pretty head there. Look at that.
So the
And that
nucleation point.
Go ahead.
I saw this in the glass before I poured. It's tiny bumps on the bottom of the glass in the shape of an elephant's head.
Precisely. So
the bubbles form on the bumps.
Right. And so what that gives you, you want a nice, see the side, that nice pretty foam, nice small bubbles.
Yeah.
Those nice small bubbles are releasing flavors into the room. So when you put your nose up to that glass, you're going to get a lot more aroma than you would with a glass without a nucleation point. So.
Smells good.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And isn't this a cool glass?
It is a cool glass.
I think it's one of the neatest glasses that I've gotten from any brewery. I do recommend, if you get a chance to actually get branded glassware, it is one more step to enjoying your beer at the next level. And that's the difference between just drinking or enjoying your beer. Yeah. When this glassware was actually sent to me by Delirium, but it was because we were doing a live stream on it. And I learned all kinds of things. It subsequently led to my doing one with the brewer and a visit to the brewery. All those memories kind of go together in this one cool glass. And you can do the same thing. If you have branded glassware for that beer and you pour it in, first of all, it's optimized for that beer. Is that a little hokey? Yeah, a little bit. But it goes into the overall experience because it's all embracing. You know, you taste the beer, you smell the beer, you look at the beer, you experience the beer. When you swallow it, it, goes all the way down. It is an entire experience, which is different different like watching this video. It's just your eyes and your ears, but I can't smell it. I can't taste it. I can't experience it. So I highly recommend branded glassware. It really, it's a nice touch.
So yes, the stem is an elephant trunk. And I can clearly see the, 2/3 of the bubbles are coming right up the center of the glass.
And they continue. And that's what the nucleation point does.
Yeah.
Because, so this is a triple. So it should give you some nice peppery characteristics. It should be very drinkable. It has a pretty high ABV. I think it's 8.9, maybe. Look on there and see. So
8.5% alcohol by volume.
8.5. Okay. So that's that's double the strength of most normal beers. But you'll notice you really don't taste the alcohol, and it's very drinkable.
Yeah, it's very drinkable.
And that's what makes it a dangerous beer.
I can see that.
But you can just sit here and sip on this one for a long time and enjoy it. And the other neat thing about a Delirium is it tastes good even if it warms up to room temperature. And as a beer judge, that's one of the things that we look for If a beer tastes good cold, that's great. When it warms up, when you're coming back to make your final pick and it still tastes good and it's warmed up, because the flaws tend to come out. That's why with industrial beers they say serve
That's
it
why
ice cold.
Coors Light, right?
Yeah, serve it ice cold because you don't want to taste what it tastes like any other way.
Yeah. How many of these are we going to have, Tomboy asks. So every time we do one of these, I get another 6-pack of whatever beer we're drinking. And I have one. And so now the fridge here at work is like full of beer and nobody takes them, right? I think nobody wants to drink at work. So I don't know.
Well,
maybe I'll take some home with me.
We need to do more of these, Alex. I mean,
the only choice.
Well, I mean, we just consume enough of this to enjoy ourselves because all of us have things to do.
Yeah. So I think a lot of you have noticed, but of course we are live. I didn't point it out. You know, any comments you post, we see them. We're responding. All right. Ryan will take one. That's fine. Great. All right. So what are you still live? I mean, you live stream, you have a podcast, you post videos to YouTube. Do you mind saying what stuff are you doing these days, content creation wise?
Well, the live streaming got a little out of hand. Unlike you, I couldn't keep up the once a week pace between getting in guests and preparing for them. That's a lot of work. So I decided to make mine about once a month, which has really worked out better. Okay. And between those, I do interviews, and they're not live interviews. I use Riverside to record them. I used a script to do some editing, and I use Premiere Pro to finish them up.
So tell us about Riverside. I've never used Riverside before.
I'm pretty impressed with Riverside. I'm sure there are other ways to do it, but it's pretty easy to use. It looks just like the interface we're on here, except what's different is it's in the background, simultaneously uploading from everyone's camera into the cloud, which is different than Zoom. Zoom is uploading real time what you have.
Right.
The Riverside is not real time. Most of the time it finishes uploading by the time you've done the interview, but sometimes it might take 30 minutes or an hour later to finish. And then you have a pristine image from their webcam or whatever kind of camera they're using to go with, and the audio is as good as their mic is, and there's none of this dropouts and pixelization that you can
simultaneously get the real-time thing in kind of low definition, so it looks like this as you do it, but then afterwards you get the full high definition raw files.
But there's no cool audience.
Right. Downside to everything, right? Okay. Neato. So that's Riverside. All right. So Steer in Romania says, any beer-related overseas travel plans for this summer, Doug?
Yes. I'm going actually to South Africa to judge the African Beer Cup this month. So I'm looking forward to that. Have never judged the best beer in Africa before, so that'll be interesting. Then I will be in San Diego in June for the American Homebrewers Association. They are having HomebrewCon. HomebrewCon is great. If you've never been there, you ought to go to HomebrewCon. It's in San Diego, let's see, the 22nd, I think, June 22nd. And it'll be just a bunch of great people who all enjoy brewing beer for 3 days. We learn about beer. We have parties. I mean, it's a big time. I'll be in Craft Brewers Conference in Nashville, and then I will be in Asheville, North Carolina for the North Carolina Brewers Cup, and then in Belgium for the Brussels Beer Challenge. And that's what I have so far.
All right. That's pretty good. So then you also have a podcast. Is that really just the same as the videos?
It is. Yeah.
and you charge for some content, right? Don't you have a sponsorship thing, or is it all free? How does that work?
I have Patreon supporters, and so through Patreon and then spot donations, I don't know how else to call them. I use my platform as Crowdcast, and I like Crowdcast because of the Q&A features and things like that. And yeah, I will have to try Orchard's Thieves. That's a new one for me, Mark. I'll have to look it up. So Crowdcast ties into Patreon really well. And so people can support me either on a one-off. They say, ooh, I like that webinar. So you can just, they'll get $5 or whatever, buy me a beer kind of thing.
So do they get exclusive content? Or
not in that. They're just contributing to that one particular event. So I had one recently with Charlie Bamsforth, probably one of the most renowned professors in the area of beer production, at least in the United States and maybe in the world. And so people that wanted to, be in that live event will sometimes contribute. The Patreon group, on the other hand, is a little different. They support all the live streams, and so they make a monthly contribution. And as a result, they get unique interviews that I have that I don't post any other way. So, for example, I interviewed the brewer at Delirium, this very beer. So my Patreon supporters, they have access to that interview, and I haven't put it on YouTube yet.
Okay. So Tomboy is asking, without saying what you're paid, do beer judges make money?
No, not really. We have a lot of nice fringe benefits. There's some great parties that give you beer. If you travel, most of the time they will provide accommodations and everything, all your expenses while you're there. Usually your travel expenses are on your own nickel. But it's the way to travel. I'm telling you, if you can get into that, it's great.
Yes, that's good enough. All right.
Well, I mean, just to add to that, and again, I started out just 5 years ago. I know I may look like I've been doing it my whole life, but I really haven't. And I started about 5 years ago, went to my first AHA or BJCP beer judging, was a first-time judge, and started judging and enjoyed it and just kept at it and practiced and learned. And, once you get some experience, they will invite you to the African Beer Cup.
Nice. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. All right. So your guests then are just on their laptop?
Yeah, more often than not.
They install the software on their laptop, the Riverside?
Yeah, Crowdcast is what I primarily use, or in Riverside, you've got a Chrome-based site, but no different really than Restream like we're using right now. And for the most part, that works pretty well. Again, it works fantastically with Riverside because you get pristine audio and video, but it is not live. And you've got no audience interface. Now, you can actually use Restream and stream it out if you choose to.
Right.
But that gets complicated. You can't answer questions because you're on another platform, and so I don't do that. I like Crowdcast for the live interviews, and those usually go pretty long. We have an hour's worth of content and then usually an hour's worth of questions where the audience can get their questions answered by a subject matter expert.
Oh, nice. Yeah, 2-hour stream. That's a lot.
It is.
When you edit down the videos, like how much do you edit them down? Like, is it just a little bit, or do you really squish them?
Well, it's a work in progress. I haven't done a lot in the past, and I'm starting to realize I've got to shorten them down. So mostly what I've been doing of late is shortening down. Since the main part of the webinar is about an hour long, there can be 10 minutes worth of intro and chatter at the beginning before they get into the real stuff, and usually have a little bit at the end. So usually you can cut that down to 40, 45 minutes without a whole lot of work. the Q&A, I'm starting to post all of the Q&A as YouTube shorts. And I really like doing that. And so I've got a nice clean Q&A at the end. Yeah, I have fun with my setup. I can give you an idea what that looks like.
Wow.
So that's this, and the reason it's overly complicated is because I've got I don't know about that, but I've got several cameras here that I'm trying to simultaneously use. So that's why I said I think you
got
one up
the
me,
camera
Alex.
pointed at you. You've got the camera
Yeah.
behind your back. You've got the beer camera.
Yeah, I've got.
Looks like
if
there's
you want
more
to
than
see,
that.
so I've got one camera behind me that's actually recording, and I'll use that for a point of view in my videos. I have the cinema camera that's right here live on the glassware. And I have this back camera that's just kind of a view of the whole setup, so people know this is live and it's real when I do it. Then I've got a side camera which is zoomed way too far in, and I will use that. So if I need to show somebody the studio, some aspects of it. Sorry, I know that's maybe disorienting.
That's great.
But I find that's really necessary to, if you're going to share what I'm doing.
I like the frame with the Christmas lights over it.
Oh, well, that's really just to give the beer some sparkle. So, so this is what the cinema camera looks like, and there's a TV behind it, so that gives it a little bit of color. I'll move that up just a little bit. So I've got a nice bright lens in there that throws a nice bouquet. So you can see it's a pretty short focus. So if we switch over to the side camera that doesn't have nearly as bright a lens, you can see their Christmas lights basically just strung over a frame. But that was the easiest and cheapest way that I could figure out how to do this, because you're trying to keep. Yeah, well, you're trying to keep all this within arm's reach, so you can work everything. And this monitor is giving me all the views of the different cameras, so I know they're in focus or pointed at the right things when I switch to them. And it's just kind of necessary when you're a one-man show. You got a producer. So yeah, I don't have that. I don't have anybody in the background pushing buttons for me. So I kind of have to do this to make it all work. And hopefully most of it is hidden. So
the background behind you with the lights and the bottle on the shelf, that's real, right? That's not a green screen.
That is real.
Right.
Yeah, I started out with a virtual background because with the ATEM equipment, you can generate beautiful backgrounds, and you can green screen and do all that. But I realized as the kind of if you go with a green screen and you're hiding your background, I think people think, what else are you hiding?
Right.
And I never wanted to be seen as doing anything except what I enjoy and do. So. So while we're talking about that kind of thing, how is my video looking? Is it coming through nice and clear?
Oh yeah, you look great. You look great.
Okay. Well, that's only. So what I have set up here, we'll zoom in on it a little bit. I think you can see right over here next to my head.
Ah, infinity.
So I'm sitting there watching my Speedify, so I can know exactly what's going on. Let's see if we can come in a little bit more. So right there's the Speedify stream, which enabled me to really do what I'm doing. When I first started, I was limited to a 10 megabit upload for my whole household, and it was a huge struggle, and I tried and I looked at live view and all these other things. And then when I talked to you guys, all I had to do was pop in that software and use a hotspot that I already had, and all of a sudden I was streaming.
Nice. So what internet connections are you combining?
I'm combining. I have an AT&T hotspot, and I'm actually in my basement, so it is upstairs in the attic, so about 25 feet up with a antenna, because I don't get a great connection here either. So the hotspot's on an antenna up there. Ethernet cable drops down here to where I am, and then I use Speedify to bond together my network that I get, my cable network, which is now 20 megabits per second upload when I get it. That's what it's theoretically supposed to be, but I don't get it all the time. I still want you guys to give me a graph so I can go back to my cable provider and say, hey, I am not getting what you promise.
Okay. Yeah.
I've asked for that before now.
Yeah. So we prototyped some stuff. We've got some graphs, but needs a little bit more work before we can share it with everybody. So that's coming. That's coming.
Well, I think there's some real value in that, at least to me, for those of us that can't get fantastic internet but want to do live streaming. And that's essential because, if you're a one-man show and you're interviewing somebody, and I usually have as many as 2,000 people registered for my events. You got a bunch of people there. If all of a sudden you got a glitchy connection, you've lost your show. So it's a big, big deal.
And audiences go fast. If you're off for 1 minute, who's going to sit there waiting for you to come back for a minute? Everyone pops onto another stream, right?
In a heartbeat. And there really aren't any affordable alternatives for, solo producers like myself. So Speedify is a lifesaver for me. And I'm not just saying that. I mean, I use it just like you can see here. Every one of my events is done just like this. I bring up the main screen where I'm looking at what's going on. I've got notes over here, and I've always got Speedify right there so I can see what's going on and know if my stream is going bad.
That's awesome. Oh, so we skipped a Tomboy question, which was, what's Restream though? Oh, sorry. So Restream is a company that does, actually they've got a couple different products these days. There are two that I use. One is the classic Restream product, where you can stream to them RTMP, and then you log into their service in the web interface. You can hook it up to your Facebook, your YouTube, your Twitch, your whatever. They have every service out there. So then when you live stream, you just stream to Restream, and they stream to all the other places. So if you want to be on 8 places at once, they do that for you, and they'll gather up all the comments from all of them and give you one web page that shows you all the comments from all the different stuff. The other product they have, which we're also using right now, is Restream Studio, which is a web-based interface for doing interviews like this. So the software where we're switching whether we're side by side and putting this graphic above, and we see your comments over here on the side. For us, that's Restream Studio. So we're using that as this web front end to run this interview, and it's pretty nice. StreamYard's a similar product, if you've heard of that. And all right.
I use Restream also, but I use it as my RTMP distribution from Crowdcast.
Nice.
So that way I can stream to LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, other places too, but that's where I primarily stream to.
Nice. All right. Let's see. So, any history on the Delirium? I'm really enjoying this.
It's a great.
I feel like you had a fantastic story about the Delirium.
There's a lot of them, but maybe the most interesting one, I think, some question was asked about why an elephant. And the brewery has I don't know, it's just very outreaching, very warm brewery. They really get the people involved. So they apparently had a co-op college student. I'm going to use that term. I don't know that that was appropriate back then, but it was college student working his way through school who worked for them actually filling kegs. But was it doing graphic arts? And they approached the brewery when they had this new beer, and he said, "Can I take a shot at your logo?" And he drew up this elephant and submitted it, and he got 2 cases of beer.
All right.
And it is probably
and bragging rights for life, right?
Yeah. And it's probably one of the most popular beer logos in the world.
Yeah. All right. Marby asks, Doug, does streaming to multiple locations benefit your viewership?
Mostly indirectly. The beauty of it, I doubt very many people ever watch the whole live stream in LinkedIn or Facebook or anywhere else. But when they see you're active in streaming, you kind of get 3 times the visibility. So as I said, I have about only 2,000 or so that show up in Crowdcast. But that's it. That's period. And so if I stream to LinkedIn and I stream to YouTube and I stream, which doesn't cost me anything except the cost of restream, now I've got even more visibility. Plus you get a backup copy of the recording when it goes to YouTube because you've got it recorded there. So I think it's pretty darn essential.
All right, Tomboy is asking, what's Crowdcast? Sorry if you answered this.
Well, you're mentioning StreamYard. It is similar to StreamYard and any number of other live streaming platform. It's the one I started with and I've kind of stuck with. I don't know that it's the best, but I like their Q&A function that they have, and it has really helped me grow my audience, and that's one of the reasons I've stuck with them. So their Q&A is really cool. My events generally have a worldwide audience, so there's a big issue with time differences. The Q&A is one of the most important parts of it. So the cool thing is, at any time when I'm set up a Crowdcast event, people can go ahead and post their questions pre-stream, and those questions creates a link in Crowdcast, and so when their question goes live, they get an email saying, "Hey, your question's being answered right now by Doug Piper in the live stream broadcast that you set up." So if you happen to be awake and up, you can click right then. You don't even have to be watching it, and you can catch your part. Now, this is the best part. Again, we're talking time difference, so they may be sleeping. Next morning, they get up. They'll have that email. They click on it. It goes right to the place in the live stream where their question was being answered. So it encourages Q&A, and people learn. We all learn from each other, and that's the beauty of it. It's just a fantastic way to share everything.
That's really cool.
Are we going to open the second beer, or am I going to sit here and let it get cold?
Sure. So what's the second beer you have?
I mean, it's not good to let your beer get warm.
That's right.
Even though good ones should still taste good.
Yeah. So I think we have different second beers, right?
We do.
So you're going to the beer cam?
Well, I'll move it around just a minute. So let's see. I adjusted my camera just a little bit, so we'll.
Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, a classic.
Yeah,
So I have Yard's Philadelphia Pale Ale. Because the Yard's brewery is directly across the street from our office. So nice benefit.
Yeah, I don't have a brewery quite that close. Sierra Nevada's about an hour's drive away. But we'll give this a nice pour. The reason I picked this one is Sierra Nevada is a classic, and it is just I like IPAs, but I can be IPA'd out in a hurry.
Yeah, me too.
And the beautiful thing about a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale is you have all the wonderful characteristics of an IPA, but it's in a, I'll say, more drinkable format. Now, I'm going to zoom in on that just a little bit. Give us a little idea how nice and delicious this cable is. This.
So how much foam do you want when you pour a beer?
You want as much as you can get without making a mess.
Okay.
The foam is where the flavor is. And look how nice and brilliantly clear that beer is.
Yeah, that looks great. A little more orange.
That's a real sign of a delicious beer, because that means that brewer took the time to brew it right and nice and clear. Now, it's not a red ale, but it does have some nice caramel malts in it. So the head, does it have an excessive head? No, it does not have an excessive head. First of all, it is very hard to get a head like this on a regular beer. So this first of all tells you you're dealing with a brewery that knows what they're doing and how to produce a beer. All these bubbles coming up through the glass bring flavor with them. So if I had a nice flat head and drank from it, I wouldn't get near the aromatics that I would get on a beer that has a lot of nice foam. So that, several things going for you. So let's try it. Now, the other thing you get is you get protection. Beer oxidates very quickly. You've got a nice insulating layer over your beer, which is keeping the beer isolated from oxygen, because this foam is full of CO2. So it is just it is part of the experience. The other thing, unless you just happen to like to burp, is you get a nice head on there. You are not going to hear the beer more and more often. So while it doesn't eliminate all of that, you still kind of get the pluses of both. Not too much carbonation, enough carbonation, a beautiful beer that is pleasing not only to the taste buds, but also to the eyes. Cheers.
So what is the head actually? I don't know. I guess I don't know enough chemistry maybe to understand the answer. I mean, I guess the bubbles are full of carbon dioxide, but I think it's more than just water. Any idea why does beer have so much more foam than water? Do you know what it is?
Well, that is some real science, and I did a webinar with the Pope of Foam, who is Charlie Bamsforth, where he explained it. But it is really complicated chemistry, and I won't begin to try and explain it. But basically, to get good foam, there has to be a certain amount, a nice balance of proteins in the beer. Hops also help create nice foam in the beer. The glassware has to be spotlessly, or what they call beer clean. Mm-hmm. Now, if you'll notice, switching back to this cinema camera, that glassware is nice and clear.
Yep.
And there's a reason for that, because any amount of what you're seeing there is just chill haze coming from the glass, condensation. Mm-hmm. If you have any oils in the glass, it will immediately kill the head. So if you go to a restaurant or a brew pub or tap room and they pour you a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale or similar, or a Delirium or anything else that should have a good head, and there's no head, that's a quick indication that chances are it may not be the beer, it's the glassware, and that it was not completely clean.
Oh, all right. Learning something here.
But it's a good head on a beer, and lacing. Now, we're not getting great lacing on this one. A little better lacing. Now,
what do you mean by lacing?
All right. Now, look at these side by side. You get the other camera. You see kind of a difference. Lacing is the term. You see, I may have to move that camera up just a little. All right. So you see in this one, you can see kind of a foam residue.
Yeah.
You don't really see any in this Sierra Nevada. Okay, that is called lacing, and it is also a sign of clean glassware, first of all. It's also a sign that this brewer knew how to create a long-lasting foam that would create lacing. And it's a characteristic of fine beers. Even though it might be, some of us might look at it and go, oh, well, it left the glass dirty. No, it really didn't. And you won't find that in most typical industrial beers. You go pour one of those, you won't see that nice, pretty lacing. That's typically proteins that are in the beer that are left over from the foam. But, you know, even between this two different styles, you can see one has nice lacing, and there's a little bit of lacing there.
Yeah.
This one has a lot more lacing.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, the same for me, right? I've got the delirium, and I've also got a lot of lacing. Okay,
So-
exact same thing. So it's real.
It's real. The delirium, it does look messy. But it is a characteristic of the best beers in general will leave a glass with beautiful lacing. Sometimes when we're judging, we will say it looks like a disorganized lingerie, or, you know, it's just once you learn to realize it's not messy, it's actually a skill of the brewer. You begin to understand that's a sign of a fine beer, and it's very difficult to do.
Nice. So do you own a lot of brewing equipment, like you yourself? I mean, you said you
too much.
There a room full somewhere?
I do. A garage full, actually. It's very tempting to think equipment will help you brew better. And in some cases, it's true. In general, it's not, though, unless you have a specific challenge with it. So what I've learned, actually, and I think I mentioned you this maybe pre-show, Alex, I learned sous vide a couple of years ago as a result of my home brewing. I got interested in sous vide. Now, everybody, I think, hopefully knows what sous vide is. That's cooking in plastic bags with water. Sous vide is perfect for brewing beer. So, and it makes it very easy to brew it like a pot of soup rather than having this large, you know, most home brewing, or a lot of home brewing, is done outside because you have a big propane burner and a big pot, and you look like you're doing a big witch's brew. There's some better equipment, what they call all-in-ones. Grainfather makes them. There's a couple of others, a bit more expensive than that. Those are electric, and you can do those inside, but they tend to be 5 or larger gallon batches. With sous vide, you can actually I brew 1.5 gallon batches. And I would rather brew small batches more often to have fresher beer and to learn the various flavors. And as a beer judge, that is the one thing you kind of have to do. You can't depend on commercial beers to teach you the flavors. You've really pretty well got to do a certain amount of home brewing to understand beer. For me, at least, I didn't have that developed a palate until I started home brewing.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, how else can you understand it except to do it, right?
You need to do it. And if you want to learn, come to San Diego, June 21st, 22nd, something like that, and come to HomebrewCon. There'll be classes to teach you how to do it. You'll meet all kind of home brewers, and you'll have a ton of fun.
Nice. That sounds great. Did you say you're starting to judge coffee?
I am. And I really didn't drink coffee except when I was in college to get through exams. and that ruined me.
Yeah. So how is that work the same way? There's contests and a certification, and
Well, it's a little more commercial. So you really have to really work. I have a local coffee roaster that I work with to teach me. And yes, I had to enlarge my palate. And that's the only reason I went after coffee was many of the beer flavors are coffee-like. And if you don't know the description, so for example, there's a beer called a porter. It actually used to be the world's most popular beer. A porter that's done right generally is kind of a cappuccino-like flavor. Well, I didn't drink cappuccinos. So I was at an immediate disadvantage. So what I did learn, and it's the same thing I tell people that tell me, they say, oh, I don't like beer. You haven't had the right beer. And that's where I was challenged on coffee is I said, well, I really don't like coffee. And they said, you haven't had the right coffee. And they were right. And so I worked with a company called Cruve, and I love their equipment. They just have this nice fancy glassware. And I do pour overs. And a pour over is just like home brewing, except you don't have the fermentation. And just learning how to do that as a pour over, and you can do it with anything. I just happen to like the Cruve glassware. It's just real easy to use. So, but you could do it with, tea glasses. The pour over just taught me flavors. Alex, I guess you've tried some of the newer coffees, light roasts, and they'll have aromatics with blueberries and strawberries and blackberries and all these flavors, and are mostly in the aromatic side of it. But you can take coffee and you can drink a lot of it, not have a problem driving. might be trying to go to sleep, but you don't have a DUI kind of problem, and you can learn these flavors. So you can, if you get a fruit forward beer, and you're sitting across the table with your spouse or best friend, and say, oh wow, this coffee has blueberry. Well, that's just like the way you judge beer. You're tasting it. I mean, it's just like this. You can get the black pepper characteristic. You can get the cracker characteristic. We get a little bit of kind of a CO2 bite that's still coming off of it from that continuous stream of bubbles. And the coffee's no different. Yeah. So no, I don't have a favorite kind. I just have what a local roaster, as I'm trying to learn from, he says, he hands me a bag and he said, you need to learn this one. Because this one's got plums in it. So yes, I do taste tea. Matter of fact, that's my go-to. That's what I've got in my Yeti cup here. Is some nice iced tea. So I love a delicious iced tea.
Yeah.
I love delicious hot tea too.
Are there contests? Are there competitions for tea? I feel like I haven't heard of that. There probably
I haven't found that yet. But they should be if there's not. We ought to start one.
Yeah. All
but
right.
Yes, I drink a lot of tea. And I'm probably going to have my coffee when we're done.
Sounds good. So tomorrow's National Beer Day. So are you doing anything for National Beer Day?
I'm talking to you.
Yeah, this is it.
Hey, and it's got to be tomorrow. Yeah, it's tomorrow somewhere. So
that's right. I guess in England it has tomorrow started. It might have. No, I think we're about an hour away still. But certainly in Eastern Europe.
I will probably do some video or something, but I don't have a live stream because I only talk to subject matter experts. I don't do live streams just for the sake of live streaming. So my audience knows when I bring on somebody, they're a subject matter expert. We're not just filling up airtime. Tom, no, I have not been to Australia, but I have several friends down there that, and I want to go down there.
He might be pointing out that it's It's tomorrow in Australia.
Oh, that works for me.
It definitely is. All right. So if somebody really wanted to get much more into the beer tasting and where do they start?
The BJCP website is what I would go to, bjcp.org. There's quite a bit of information there. It's pretty technical, but you can get your way through it. There's actually an online test that you can take, which will get you your first level of certification as a beer judge. It's all online. There's a slight charge for it. I think it's $10 to take the test, and you can take it as many times as you want. I suggest they have a 3-pack for $20, and that's what I did to get my certifications in beer, mead, and cider. And they have all those tests. They have lots of resources. American Homebrewers Association is a great place to start. And Alex, I can give you a link there for a $10 discount to join American Homebrewers Association. Not advertising for them, but I am on their governing committee. And I will be there along with the other governing committee members in San Diego. Would love to see you there. It's a fun event. All right. I would also go to the BJCP website and look for a competition that's in your area that you can drive to. They always need volunteers. They need people to help serve the beers. They need judges. Doesn't matter if you haven't experienced. Just tell them it's your first time. We've all got a first time. They'll put you across from a very experienced judge. That's what they did with me. I think the first beer I tasted, I said it tasted beery and it was yellow and it had a white head. And he didn't say anything. And I said, "So what did you write down?" And he said, "Well, it had a seafoam head with chestnut and yellow highlights. It had a crackery malt flavor with hints of roast and toffee." And I looked at him and I said,
So
"You
pretty
got
much the
all
same thing."
from that sip of beer." And it was stunning, but it encouraged me. And I've learned since then that all those flavors are in a lot of things, except typically your industrial beers. But in all the foods, and yeah, sure tastes like beer, Tom. There's neither one of these beers that Alex picked out tastes like a typical beer. Tastes nothing like an industrial beer, at least here in the United States. Might taste similar to some European beers. So, I'll go back to what I tell people when they say, "I don't like beer." You literally haven't had the right one. And all you need to do is talk to someone and you could say, "What do you like? Do you like wine?" Well, if you like wine, you would probably like a lambic or a goose. If you like champagne, you would probably like a goose. If you like malty things or things that taste more like bread, the German beers, most of the German beers have that. If you like things that are more interesting in that, Alex, you were talking about Hefeweizens. That has banana and clove flavors in it. Delicious, very refreshing beer. So beer versus wine is one of the broadest beverages that's out there because you've got everything from wine-like characteristics to very neutral beers like a light beer, which is very, very neutral. But so you've got all these flavors in between. So just like I found out on coffee was nothing like what I drank in college. When I've got the modern, what they call them, third wave coffees, and you do a pour over, and it's fresh and it's freshly ground. It's an entirely different experience, and beer is the same way. And beer fresh in the brewery is an entirely different experience. So if you've got a great brewery, you've got yards right across the street.
Yep.
I have a few good local breweries here, but I like to go up to Sierra Nevada in Asheville. To go up to Sierra Nevada and get one of these poured fresh from the brewery, it's an entirely different experience. And that's where you really taste the best beer.
All right. All right, we're at 5:10. Are you good to go for a few more minutes, or?
Oh yeah, I didn't want us to go over.
Yeah. Well, I'm okay with going over.
You hadn't finished your beer yet.
Yeah, double fisting here.
Yeah. Hey, cheers.
Man, the delirium is so good. This is just. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the yards either, but this is delicious.
Yeah, the delirium is an amazing, and I would highly recommend. I've been on the.
There's our view of the Yards Brewery, right? So you see the giant, those are the giant tanks. Leave the office sometimes, it's got that yeast, like, smell of like bread or whatever.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I started learning to do sourdough bread. Is many of those same flavors, particularly the sourdough characteristics. So if you learn lambics and goose and some of those European sour beers, a lot of the same flavors that are in sourdough are also present in those beers. So it's good to cook and to become a good beer judge.
So maybe this is a dumb question, but why do different areas' beers taste different? I mean, is it just kind of cultural?
Yeah,
that
totally.
They like it, or is it the ingredients that are available in the area?
It's all that.
Just not a factor anymore.
Well, it's local tastes. So in Africa, Guinness will taste a little different than it does in Europe, and I expect to find that. Because the breweries are there to make money, not to necessarily replicate itself and clone itself. So if local tastes require a little change to the recipe or the ingredients change it a little bit. And yes, the water is a huge impact on local flavors. It's real interesting talking to the folks at Sierra Nevada. They will tell you, what they do, because they do try and match up the flavors, but they have a brewery here in the Carolinas and they have one in California. And the water in California is quite a bit different than the water in the Carolinas that comes out of the mountains.
And even different than the Delaware River.
Maybe so.
We had a scare about a week ago when somebody dumped 8,000 gallons of some toxic chemical in the river. And it never showed up in the water. They were texting everyone in the city every couple hours about like water supply is still good, but buy bottled water. And finally it'll pass through. And apparently no one got it.
Well, local water does drive a lot of the beer styles. So if you get seriously interested in the beer styles, the different water profiles from the cities that made them famous drive the characteristics of the beer. So when you brew it, you will try and mimic mineral characteristics from that beer style in order for it to taste right.
Yeah, so I was reading, I don't remember what book, some American history book, and there was a section about how Teddy Roosevelt would make the presidential train go hundreds of miles out of its way to stop by Colorado to get Coors, because it was made with that incredible mountain water. And I just think that's something that got lost as it got industrialized, right? Because
pretty sure.
Well, doesn't seem like something you'd go hundreds of miles out of your way for. So I assume it was different back then.
Well, and I'm sure it was, and they know how to brew great beer and do brew great beer, but what they brew fits the palate of the largest part of their sales base. So I mean, they're selling to what their audience wants. So other Yards Brewery being they're serving the tastes of what people like in the tap room. So that gives the brewer feedback. So the brewer's going to do more of that flavor of beer. If you come in, Alex, and your friends come in and everybody says, try that Hefeweizen and they got it Yards. I don't know that they even have one, but I mean, they're going to brew
always, occasionally.
They're going to brew to the audience that they have. So yeah, local ingredients, local taste drive the flavors.
The real question is, would the alcohol neutralize the chemicals? I think mostly no.
No, but it's a good point. They claim, and I think there's a lot of truth into it, that they say beer saved the world in the Middle Ages. And there's a lot of truth to it because they didn't know why, but in the Middle Ages, particularly in Europe, the waters were terrible. You would get sick, Black Plague, etc., from drinking water. So no one drank the water. What they did was drink beer in the Middle Ages. And everybody brewed beer in their household. And that's what they served. And that's what you drank. Children, adults, everybody. Now the alcohol was lower. They didn't know why, but you didn't get sick drinking beer, and you did get sick drinking water. Yep. Well, we all know now that it was the pasteurization process, but they did not know it. And so beer was essential.
So I was reading it. So in the American colonies, there were all kinds of water problems. And so, yeah, beer brewing was incredibly important. And that, in fact, American men from just before the Revolution on were drinking so much beer, that I was listening to this historian saying that Americans misunderstand what happened with Prohibition, right? We all think that Prohibition was this terrible failure. They put it in for a few years. Everyone hated it. They took it away. Life went back to normal. But they said that actually Americans were stumbling around drunk, right? The reason they amended the Constitution is that Americans were drunk all the time. And that the per capita alcohol consumption after Prohibition has been 1/3 of what it was before, right? That Americans used 3 times as much.
But in Czechoslovakia, they drink more beer than anywhere else in the world, yet they have some of the toughest DUI driving standards. It's zero tolerance.
Okay.
So I don't know that one necessarily goes to the other, but the one thing that's clear, the Pilgrims stopped at Plymouth Rock because they ran out of beer. And it wasn't because they were partying on the Mayflower. It was because that was the source of potable water. Yeah. They were a ship in the ocean. You can't drink ocean water. That beer came from Europe. And beer has protein and all kind of other nutrients that is good on a long voyage.
Liquid bread.
So when they ran out of beer, they didn't just run out of their party beverage. They ran out of water. So they had to stop and go brew more in order to have safe, potable liquid.
Yeah, the other interesting thing is the archaeologists, right? That in every ancient society, it appears that brewing and cities were invented at the same time, right? There are no cities that didn't have beer. And there was no one making beer in a society that didn't have cities. They seem to be invented at the same time. And
the second oldest profession.
The second oldest profession, yeah.
See that lacing in your glass? You've got some beautiful lacing.
Yeah, look at that. See that?
See?
The lacing, right? So
that's
foam kind of sticks.
And you'll notice, Alex, now if you had poured another beer, let's just say an industrial beer, it would have been very easy to drink that whole thing down, and you'd have a empty glass and you'd be grabbing another one.
Mm-hmm.
The wonderful thing about a delicious beer like both of them that we've got, your Yards that you've got, the Delirium I've got, or the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, they're flavorful enough that you can take a sip, you can enjoy it, you can think about what you're having, we can talk, we can have fun, we can take another sip. But it's a more flavorful.
No temptation to chug.
Yeah, it just doesn't lend itself to chugging. Even though you could easily.
Yeah. All right. So what are some of the best places you've gone? I mean, you told us you have South Africa coming up. Have you been to any neat places because of the judging?
Yeah, I went to Brazil this time last year and thoroughly enjoyed Brazil. The woods, but just the things coming out of the Amazon are just unbelievably different than what we're used to. I mean, you could see coffee, how it's actually comes out of the beans. You could see chocolate or cacao and how it comes out. Cashews, which I love. I had no idea what cashews look like or how they were grown. And there's the fruit of the cashew that they eat down there, along with, of course, the cashews. And Brazil nuts we know about. We went to I guess they would call it kind of a outdoor pub. And we were sitting there, and the lady came up, and she knew we were from the United States. And she said, "Would you like to see my bees?" And she knew I was a mead judge. I was kind of like, well, I guess. I mean, it was my first lunch in Brazil. I wasn't sure I was really too keen on getting stung. And she said, well, they're right there. So literally 10 feet from my outdoor table was this small little beehive, looked like a birdhouse.
Yeah.
And she said, we have stingless bees here. I said, stingless bees? She said, yep, I'll show you. She said, as a matter of fact, we have 18 different hives just in this little beer garden. This little beer garden, one but maybe 20 by 40 feet in size. And she said the bees don't fight. So there was what looked like birdhouses, little tiny beehives, not like the beehives we have. And they were all around the perimeter, and all these people sitting around drinking beer, and the bees don't like beer. Now, they do here, but in Brazil they didn't, and they were all stingless. And she went over there and took the top off, just like you were opening a Christmas box, pulled the top off, stuck her finger in there, or stuck a little eyedropper in there, pulled out some honey, and gave it to us all to taste. And the honey was like nothing I've ever had before.
Wow.
Some of the honey had kind of I would say kind of like a brown sugar flavor. Other honeys tasted like champagne. Some other honeys tasted very wine-like with a nice tartness. Other honeys just tasted sweet. I mean, and this is just in a little beer garden.
Wow.
And so this lady was fascinated with the bees they were bringing out of the Amazon, and they were all stingless. I mean, isn't that crazy? You have a beer garden
That is crazy.
with a dozen or 18 beehives right there. I mean, it's in the beer garden.
Yes, they say, right, so it makes a huge difference, like what the bees eat and what plants they're grabbing pollen from. It has a huge effect on the honey.
Well, but all these are pulling it, they're all right there in the same place. So part of it is the bee itself and, certainly what they harvest. But the woods that were down there was an Umbriana wood. Oh, man, that wood, when you have wines or beers, we talk about oakiness that you can have in them. Down there, they have woods that will put in it kind of a brown sugar and hazelnut flavor. That's Umbriana wood. The fruits that are down there. Oh, I love Brazil. Would go back in a heartbeat. I mean, it's a real tasting.
I still have not crossed the equator. I've
I've
been to India, Japan, China, Greece, but pretty much all the way around the world, but all north of the equator. So I need to make
try Brazil. It was a great experience. I hope South Africa will be similar with some of the unusual things, but I don't expect. I mean, there's nothing as diverse as the Amazon.
South Africa recently, and they've all had fantastic times. So I think you'll have.
Well,
fun.
I don't expect to see the variety that I would out of the Amazon. Just with the plants and animals, and they just some really unique things. So yeah, Brazil's pretty cool. Love to go to Europe. There's all kinds of just historic breweries. Those are fun. United States, bebopping around. I'll be going to San Diego. I'll be exploring the breweries there. Those, some great recent history. That's a lot of fun. But it's fun to go to a brewery in any country because you really have a chance to get to know the people and the local flavors and the local preferences and great conversation and delicious beer.
That's awesome. All right. Oh my gosh, we're just about 5:30 here, so I think we're gonna call this. This was awesome, Doug. Thank you so much for coming here. You were a favorite here at Speedify Live.
Speedify makes it happen. I mean,
That's right. So, cheers.
You look down there at my screen; it's right there. I'm watching it to make sure.
I love it. Finding all your internet connections, give you stable internet.
I hadn't seen it drop off. I've seen it change a little bit, but so far it is rock solid. Unless you tell me different, you're seeing the actual result.
Oh, yeah.
I
No,
don't see.
You look perfect. You've been great. No breakups, audio, video, anything.
Well,
so that's fantastic.
I would assure you, with my cable service I get here, it would not have happened without Speedify. So I am deeply indebted to you guys. If I had bought a Live View or some of those other systems, I'm sure I would have spent a lot more money and be a lot more unhappy.
Yeah, I bet. All right. Well, thank you, Doug. Thank you, everyone.
Let me just add one thing, Alex.
Okay,
I was
please.
telling somebody today about the webinar, and they said, "Oh, I love Speedify." They were in Abu Dhabi, and they said V over IP is not allowed in that country because there's a phone monopoly. They subscribed to Speedify, and Speedify allowed them to work around that V over IP problem. So when I told her I was going to be on your show, she said, "Tell them I loved Speedify."
Nice. It's good to hear. Yeah, we encrypt all of your traffic. You know, we're letting you use multiple internet connections, but we're also encrypting everything as we send it out. So if someone in the middle is trying to stop you from visiting certain websites or using certain apps, we will break their ability to block you. So we're here for them.
Well, she wasn't a streamer, so I just thought that was important to add.
That's good. Yeah. And any of this stuff, right? I mean, Google Meets, Zoom, voice over IP. I mean, we make a huge difference in any of this stuff. So that's fantastic. Thank you, Doug. I love hearing these stories.
Well, I had to share. That came out of the blue. I didn't solicit that or anything. So she was so excited. And I thought, well, you don't stream. And she said, I didn't need it for streaming. I couldn't. Yeah. She said she couldn't do WhatsApp. She couldn't do... What else? I don't know. She named like 4 or 5 things. And anyway, Speedify fixed all that. So anyway, it's good for more than streaming.
Nice. Yeah, from a technical point of view, it pretty much is streaming. You just have an audience of 1 or 2 people. But that's great. Yeah, any of those video calls, we do a lot to help. So awesome. Thank you, Doug. And thank you to everyone in the audience. This was great hearing from all you guys, answering your questions, getting your feedback. Talking about Schuylkill River water. Fantastic. All right. So good night, everyone, and cheers.
Cheers.